Cruz. I'm the Camp Ripley Senior Commander. I also work as my real title is I'm an Assistant Adjutant General for our Adjutant General, Major General Sean Mankey. With me tonight is Command Sergeant Major Marcus Erickson. He's my Senior Enlisted Advisor. And Officer Candidate Andrew Wensman, who is learning how to become an officer someday. So we're pretty excited for that for him as well. So let's see. Like that. Oh, I don't want to spin it. I want to go on. Very good. I'll just use the big document. There we go. So, like every organization, Camp Ripley looks at its values and its core principles, and we've created a mission statement that we use to guide our every action. And so what I like to tell people is Camp Ripley is a military training installation here in the National Guard Training Center in Minnesota, and we exist to train your nation's military for our country's worst day. We also exist to train your National Guard for your state's worst day. And right now I've got some soldiers up in Oslo, helping that community with one of their worst days, again with the spring flooding from the Red River. And obviously, we'll talk about it a little bit when we talk about how busy we've been. But your National Guard's been a pretty busy entity over the last year with COVID response, be it long-term healthcare facility help or for COVID testing and vaccination sites. So, and then finally, the reason why I'm here tonight is the third part of that mission statement is to be the best community neighbor I can be. And so as your adjacent property to the south of the city of Baxter, you're a pretty important neighbor that I want to be good to. And so that's the heart of why we're here tonight, to talk about and give you an update of what's happening at camp this summer and throughout the next year. So first slide talks a little bit about the Minnesota National Guard leadership. There'll be 3 slides. Starts with a picture of my boss, Major General Sean Mankey. He's been our Adjutant General now for about 2 years. And supporting him is Command Sergeant Major Brian Soper as his Senior Enlisted Advisor. So what we found through history is, the heart of why the U.S. military is so good is because it's NCO Corps. And so they don't let us run around without a Senior Enlisted Advisor to keep track of us. And Brian is General Mankey's. And we're the home in Minnesota, 34th Infantry Division, the storied Red Poles. They just got a new division commander this year, a gentleman by the name of Charles Kemper. He works for Medtronics. And his Senior Enlisted Advisor is CSM Michael Whitehead. Michael is also the head of the DAV at the national level. So we've got some pretty prestigious leadership throughout our organization, and those 2 gentlemen are leading the division. And then finally, the Camp Ripley leadership, the dude on top smiling at you. I've been there for 5 years as the senior commander. I'm supported on the drill weekend by an MDA, a drilling garrison commander. That would be Josh Zeimer. And next year, when you see this presentation, we'll have a new face there because Josh will cycle out this fall. And then finally, I've introduced Marcus Erickson, the right hand of the command team. So just kind of bottom line up front, the economic impact of Camp Ripley is pretty significant in central Minnesota. We are the largest employer in Morrison County. I would suggest that out of those 800 to 1,000 full-time employees, there's probably around 150 of them that live here in the Baxter community alone. And I would tell you that I've got a lot of friends that live in Baxter, including Mark Cross, who's on that list of full-time employees as well. So their payroll is pretty significant in the community. Construction projects are our next largest piece of economic impact. This year, about $19 million worth of construction occurring at Camp Ripley. On average, on the bottom, you can see it averages almost $17 million a year. And that's really what makes this number fluctuate from year to year. The others kind of stay pretty close to the same. So as we talk about 2021 and highlight some of the accomplishments of Camp Ripley, but also the Minnesota National Guard, 2021 has been extremely busy for us. We had over 550,000 DoD soldier man days at Camp Ripley. And so the way to understand that is if you come to Camp Ripley for a 14-day annual training or a 5-day period of training, I would count you 5 or 14 times for however long you're there. So every day, we're counting how many people are on the ground, and that's that's adding to that running total. On average, we're about 400,000. So that'll give you a feel for how much more busy the National Guard has been, because that extra 150,000 soldier man days were soldiers coming to Ripley to prep to go to learn how to operate inside of a long-term healthcare facility, to learn how to, give COVID tests, those kind of things. We were very busy with that state active duty mission that we have as our second tier of what's important to us. Also, we increased once again our mandates for our local, state, interagency partners. We continue to grow that number every year as well. I remember when it was in the 30,000s, and now we're near 70,000 mandates a year. We hosted some joint units, or what we call units from other services, or joint units. We hosted an Air Force unit in February of last year that was there to learn how to operate their equipment in extreme cold weather. So we provided some, below zero temperatures, around 30 below there in February. They flew into our airfield on a C-17, which is the Air Force, one of the large Air Force cargo aircraft. And it was the first time we'd had a C-17 land on our airfield in my time there. We also are hosting two salvage deep water dive teams, one from the Navy and then one from the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard has relocated its winter diving course to Camp Ripley. The Navy's been there for about 7 years. Both elements dive under our ice pack on our local lakes. And so just some amazing training for them, and they come in the middle of February and deal with the cold as well. So you're bringing up divers from Florida to come and dive under the ice here at Camp Ripley. It definitely gives them a culture shock. So the 194 Armor out of Brainerd, headquartered here at the Brainerd Armory, mobilized through Camp Ripley last spring and spent 9 months in Kuwait. They were acted as the quick response force for the Central Command headquarters, about 1,100 soldiers. Their tour was pretty significant in the fact that they were employed from Kuwait to Kabul Airport in August, and were literally on the ground securing the airport when the 82nd Airborne showed up. And so they got to welcome the 82nd Airborne and tell them where to fall in on the perimeter. Pretty important mission for that unit. That mission is very storied with its history through Bataan, and they added some new laurels to that lineage. Camp Ripley's hosting this year 2 State Patrol Academies in 2021. We're doing it again this year. In September last year, we hosted our biannual open house. We think we had the largest crowd we've ever counted. Come to that in the first weekend in September. I like to think it's because we're cool, but I really think by that point of last summer, people just wanted to get out and do things. And so we hosted about 6,000 people that got a chance to understand the facilities and the equipment that the National Guard uses. And then finally in June, I had the opportunity to cut the cake of the 90th birthday cake for the Camp Ripley as an installation. Obviously, we're 10 years away from our centennial, and will be pretty important turn of events there in 10 years for us. So this slide's in there just to remind you as civil government how your National Guard shows up to help you. So for instance, what we're doing in Oslo and some of those communities along the Red River right now, there's some reason that caused some kind of disaster or some kind of flood response, or heaven forbid a civil disturbance response that quickly consumes all your local resources, causing your sheriff then to reach out to HSEM at the state level. HSEM then will write an executive order for the governor. The governor has to sign that, which turns on the National Guard and the response. And those things that you see on the right are the kind of things that we're equipped to do in a community. So right now in Oslo, we're patrolling some dikes. We help with a whole bunch of sandbagging up there in that area. And I will tell you that when be it civil disturbance or support to a community like Oslo, our soldiers gain a lot of wellness out of that mission, because they understand they're there to help their fellow Minnesotans. The people are normally so gracious and helpful and thankful for having them there that it's really rewarding. So throughout 2021, we gained a bunch of construction projects. May not seem like a lot, but we are slowly replacing our tin huts in one of our areas. So over the last couple of years, we've sold probably, I want to say 150 to 210 huts and got rid of them. And we're building these concrete CMU buildings that are heated and cooled as new barracks in Area 5. We built a new headquarters in Area 9. Last month, we had the grand opening of the Camp Ripley Fire Hall facility. We have one of the few full-time fire departments north of the Twin Cities, and our fire department was housed with their equipment in an equipment storage building, and we've had the opportunity now to move them into a facility that's got custom-built dorm rooms and kitchens and everything a fire department needs. So we look towards the future here. I have a separate slide that talks a little bit about Nelson Hall, but we're in the middle of building 6 motor vehicle storage buildings near our what we call our MATES, or our equipment concentration site. Those buildings will house all our Bradley fighting vehicles. So we've got a whole brigade's worth of armored equipment headquartered at Camp Ripley, tanks and Bradleys, and we're trying really hard to keep them inside in our winters. We've hauled thousands of truckloads of dirt out of Camp Ripley to build 2 stormwater infiltration basins along, or 3 of them along the Mississippi River. One of them is probably 2 football fields in size and about, I would say, 10 feet deep. Those stormwater basins collect all our rainwater through our storm sewers, drop into a basin where it can leach back into the water table instead of dumping that water into the Mississippi. So we're pretty proud of that piece as we continue to be good environmental stewards. We're excited here in the next month to start the design of 2 rail spurs that we're going to build on the east side of our cantonment area, 2 half-mile long chunks of railroad with loading ramps on the end. That'll allow me to take 2 trains at once, which is important to us because when we're moving that Armor Brigade Combat Team out of Minnesota, we're normally on a very constrained timeline. So that'll allow me to load 2 trains at once. And it will help me take a process that was originally about 10 days and pare it down to about 3. So pretty cool. The last piece I'll highlight is the Joint Emergency Response Training Center that we're gonna open up here in the next month. That was some state bonding money that we received 6 years ago to build a rail derailment training center for fire departments. So we've been working with the state fire marshal to bring in apparatuses into that site. We'll have 6 oil cars that are in various stage of derailment. They'll be able to put propane-fed fires into those rail cars and teach fire departments how to approach the cars safely and put them out. There'll also be some well heads or some control valve heads for natural gas pipelines, that kind of thing. Those kind of different apparatuses out there to help train fire departments. And then finally, Nelson Hall is one of our historic buildings on the installation. It's the original post headquarters, built in 1931, the original portion utilized as our post headquarters up until the 80s, and then home to the Department of Natural Resources for about 20 years. About 2 years ago, I moved them into other facilities so that we could renovate this building, and when we finish the renovation here this summer, my headquarters will move back into it and once again be the home of the installation headquarters. And then finally, an update on where we're at with the museum. I've talked about that for probably 2 out of the 5 appearances I've had in front of you. We are still actively pursuing the Minnesota Military Museum expansion into that strip of orange land there to the east of the Minnesota State Veterans Cemetery. The legislature was kind to us last year and approved $13 million in the bonding bill for the museum, which would have paid for it probably 5 years ago when we built the estimate. But now we think we need another $10 million to build it to the 40,000 square feet that they hope it to be. And so we're back at the legislature right now asking for additional money in this year's bonding bill. I'm fairly confident we'll see it. If they do publish a bonding bill, that should probably be in there. And then we'll finally be able to get after design and building it. With then a expected opening, I expect probably in the spring of 2025. So the next series of slides kind of break down our throughput and what's happening on the installation by month. We're into May right now. We just completed some BAV turkey hunts, and we got some soldiers hunting turkey downrange right now. Next weekend, the weekend after Mother's Day, we'll have the best wear competition, regional competition. So about 6 states are gonna send their best NCOs and best soldiers to Camp Ripley. We're gonna figure out who's the best of the region, and then they'll go on to compete at the national level. I've got the first of 3 field artillery battalions on the ground right now that will be on base for the next month and a half. And so for the next month and a half, our neighbors to the north here are gonna continue to hear some impact and some noise from our field artillery operations. You can see in May, almost 80,000 man days in May. And as we look into June, that number jumps to almost 100,000. So we're gonna be extremely busy in June with units. We gained a lot of units from Fort McCoy this year. Fort McCoy was a site where they took in Afghan refugees. So when these units were building their training plan, they didn't know if they could go to McCoy. So I gained a lot of reserve units that are coming to Ripley as well to train in the June timeframe. So you'll see units from North Dakota, Illinois, Missouri, Michigan, up. The Missouri unit is the 3rd Field Artillery Battalion, so we'll 3 of them back to back to make some noise for us. And then we'll roll into July. After the July 4th weekend, we'll be back to kind of a normal summer throughput of about 60,000 a month. And units from South Dakota, Wisconsin, and Illinois will be in. The 125 will be up from New Ulm in July to fire their howitzers. They're fielding new howitzers, so there won't be a lot of firing, but they'll definitely make some noise with that. And then finally, at the end of the month, we get an opportunity to host our youth camp, which has been on kind of constrained level of operation for the last 2 years. We'll be back to a full up 2-week youth camp. And we put that camp on for soldier-connected youth that are children of National Guard and other military children in the state of Minnesota. And finally, into August, August we've got some engineer units that are going to come and blow stuff up like they like to do on our demo ranges. So if you live up or by Pillager, you're going to hear some active demo range work as well. And right now in May, we'll graduate the first State Patrol Academy that started in January. Starting after July, we'll start the next State Patrol Academy, and they'll graduate sometime in October, November. And then as we look ahead, we're once again welcome about 2,500 snowplow drivers in September and October. They come to Ripley on an annual basis to plow sand in my parking lots so that they don't plow your car in the winter. And like I said, we'll host the other State Patrol Academy. Our normal schedule of hunts, the youth and public hunt will occur in October, and a soldier hunt for muzzleloading hunting deer in November. On base, I've got some great state partners that have offices and personnel headquartered there. The DNR and the State Patrol and HSM have put permanent party there. They're all housed in a building that we call the Emergency Management Training Center. It's been a great relationship to move the DNR law enforcement arm into that building with the State Patrol. They've gained a lot of synergy in how they train together and actually are doing some combined training, which is nice. And then obviously I talked a little bit about MnDOT showing up later in the month. So some of the community outreach either coming or what we've done already this year. Well, once again in 2023, so not this summer, but next September, we will host the Camp Ripley Open House again. So we invite you to come in the second weekend in September in 2023 and join us again. This spring, we are home to a lot of 5th graders that are coming for field tours. A lot of our environmental programs get tied into that, as well as the museum. An event that occurs in the fall that we're very excited about is called Planting for the Future. We're working with our tribal communities a lot, and that program is designed to bring tribal youth out of tribal high schools, bring to the Ripley, have them share some of their culture with us, and have us share some opportunities of what the National Guard service could give to them. So it's a great relationship. We're very proud of our community support locally in Little Falls, blood drives, food drives, the Christmas gift tag program. And then on the bottom there are all sorts of different veteran hunting and fishing events. Like I said, the first weekend in June here, we'll host Trolling for the Troops. I've got about 200 applicants for that, so we're rounding up about 100 professional fishermen that'll take those veterans out on the Mississippi River and on the Lax Lake for a day of fishing. So pretty cool event. they protect all them things in the middle, the wildlife, the cultural resources, things, pests like bats and all sorts of things like that. And then on the bottom there, I've got over 15 agencies that come and look under look into our processes and make sure we're doing things right. And I would tell you that, you know, my team couldn't win the awards they do win without being stellar reviews inside of that environmental oversight. They couldn't do the work they do without a lot of help from others. So the Department of Natural Resources is a great partner. Bowser helps us with the ACUB program. The two colleges, Central Lakes and St. Cloud, give us a lot of interns in the summer. And the Nature Conservatory is another party inside of what we're doing with ACUB. We're had a really poor season so far in prescribed burning, and but we're getting busy this week. We burned our North Range and part of our Center Range today. Prior to today, we were at about 13% of 15,000 acres that we had to burn. Camp itself, that map is 53,000 acres, so we burn about a fifth of camp off every spring. And we do that purposely so a fire doesn't get away from us and come visit Baxter or Brainerd or something like that. That would be our worst nightmare. And so the land in yellow there are all parcels that we burn to prevent wildland fire, and the stuff in red that we're burning is what we're burning toward the end of the season to control invasive weeds and plants. And then finally, the ACUB Sentinel Landscape Program is still pretty important to us. Got about 35,000 acres enrolled. I got about 250 willing landowners that have signed up to enroll their land. The parcels around Camp Ripley and Green, they're already currently in some kind of environmental or some kind of easement program. Most of it is the ACUB easement, which is a perpetual easement on that land to keep it in whatever production state it's at, forest, farmland, all in an effort to prevent encroachment and development around my perimeter. And why that's important is we've invested millions of dollars into Camp Ripley, and so obviously in that mission of training your soldiers for your nation's worst day, it's important for us to protect that investment, and that's what we're doing with ACUB. And my safety dude makes me include this in every briefing, so if you see any of this stuff laying around the ground, avoid it. We still are pretty active in helping local law enforcement get rid of Grandpa's grenade that he brought home from World War II and those kind of things. But truly, the phone numbers are there to help you and to remind people that there are portions of Camp Ripley that are really dangerous that you need to avoid. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that would be my update for 2021. The team in the picture are the folks that keep me running and straight every day. And I'll gladly take any questions you have or get out of your way.
Councilman, questions?
I don't have a question, but the first time I heard you, I think it was 3 years ago, and up until I heard your presentation, my only knowledge with Camp Ripley were there were a lot of like trucks I'd see on the highway, or I'd hear the noise and think, oh, is that thunder or is that Camp Ripley? And it stuck with me, and you said, no, that's the sound of freedom.
Yeah.
And I left the presentation feeling so proud that you were in your backyard, so thank you.
Well, we do this so that you can go back to your constituents and pass that message on. That would be my one ask tonight is, you know, if you're here in the crowd or you're here representing your wards, please share that with the people you're having coffee with sometime, what we're doing. So.
Councilman, questions or comments?
General, thank you for your service. All of you, thank you for your service to any veterans. Do you no longer do the Norwegian?
Oh, yeah, we just didn't highlight it. So we had the 49th Norwegian Exchange here in March. The mayor was there as part of those activities. Next year, 49 leads to 50. So next year's a pretty important year for us. The exchange next year will occur in February. We're actively planning a pretty big social event in the St. Paul area where we're hoping to invite all our political leadership from the state and the national level, as well as the Crown Prince from Norway and the significant generals that come with that from Norway. And then we'll do a similar event like that in Trondheim at the end of the 2-week period over in Norway. So our relationship with Norway is strong right now. It's got the potential of growing even stronger. We have a program called the State Partnership for Peace, where we pair up with other expertise to help professionalize their military. Our partner for years has been the country of Croatia, but we are actively recruiting Norway to become our second state partner. Now, I will tell you that we'll probably gain more from that partnership from the Norwegians that they'll gain from us, but in this current geopolitical situation with what's going on in Ukraine and that, Norway's pretty cognizant of that they have a shared border with Russia as well. And so we're all looking for friends right now.
Anybody else? Anybody in the audience? Well, this is your chance to go right to the top.
All right.
Questions for the general? Okay, well, thank you again.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Kelly, any additions or changes to the agenda?
No, Mayor.
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to number 5, or number 6 rather. Public comments. This section is for anybody who has comments on things that are not on the agenda. We would entertain those comments at this time.
Is this when you come up and comment about the deer population in Baxter?
I'm sorry?
Is it open for any general
Yeah.
comments? Yes.
Yeah. Let's give us your name and address.
It's Mike Hammer, 4907 Circle Pines Road, Baxter. All these people here, well, this, I would say, who's here for concerns about deer? Okay? A lot of them have asked me to come up and speak for them. Their neighbors, who live, most of them live around the Camp Manassas area. And I spoke at the planning board meeting here several weeks ago in reference to the overpopulation of deer in Baxter. We have a clear problem with deer. And the fact that the planning commission is addressing that or looking at that is a hopeful thing that you as a council will take that seriously and look at some measures to help reduce the population. I think everyone here is the reason why they're here is because we all like deer, we just don't like too many deer. You know, the deer are born out there in the neighborhoods, in and around Camp Manassas in the corridor coming down to 210. Now, I can't speak for many of the other neighborhoods in Baxter. I can just kind of speak for my neighborhood, but I understand there's similar issues in many other neighborhoods in Baxter. What I'm looking for, and I think what the neighbors around the Camp Manassas property are looking for, is that being opened up to some form of taking deer out of there. Whether that's public hunting, whether that's organized public hunting, whatever. But it needs to be done. Last Wednesday, at about this time of the evening, I left my house at 4907 Circle Pines Road, Baxter, and I made the 1.7-mile loop, which is all the roads going around the Camp Manassas property by City Street. And I photographed 47 deer. Okay? And the reason why I did that in one loop is so I knew I wasn't photographing additional deer or double taking pictures on deer. And I always thought there was maybe 30 or 40 in there, but those were just the ones that I could see driving. That isn't the ones that were still a little bit back in the woods, standing in somebody's backyard that I couldn't see. These are the ones that are clearly visible from me driving on the roadway. So I guess my population estimates there were a little light before at 30 to 40. It's probably 50 to 60. I don't know. And it's been clear to all the neighbors in the city now for several years that the overbrowsing that is taking place, that the deer are literally eating themselves out of house and home. And I think we averted a big disaster this winter, and I don't know how. I don't know what the deer found to eat this winter when we had our tell you that in the first time in the 20 years that I've lived in Baxter, I had a doe and fawn come up my stairs to my house, which is, it's about 15 yards, walked up 4 stairs and came right to my front door to try to eat a frozen squash that was there. When the lights on and us sitting in the house with the TV running. Okay, we heard commotion on there, looked out the window and see a doe and a fawn. We never had that. So they were in pretty dire straits for quite a while. And we probably did have some die-off, I don't know, but it doesn't appear to me that we did when I see the numbers like that. Last Wednesday, just taking a look out there. Now, as I said before, I can't speak for other areas of Baxter because that's not my problem, okay? But it's clear that if it's a problem there, it's a problem other places. And we have these little pockets around town that are basically deer refuges. And the deer refuges have reached their carrying capacity. Anybody knows about carrying capacity? There's two different carrying capacities. There's a carrying capacity of the land, which is what as long as there's enough food, water, and shelter for the deer, that's the carrying capacity. Well, they've exceeded that. And then there's another carrying capacity, and that's what the human capacity is for them coming and eating all the shrubberies and leaving so much defecation in their yards they can't use them anymore, let kids play in the yards, or be concerned about deer ticks, because when you have 30 deer in your yard on a regular basis, I'm sorry, they're leaving something there that we don't want. If you like 30 dogs and came to your yard and visited every day, you wouldn't be very happy. And that's what many of us are facing. It's not everyone, but many of us are. Especially close to those areas where we have those little refuges. And I'm going to put, the Camp Manasseh property, we've been referring to that around the neighborhood and in the areas, the hive, okay? The Camp Manasseh deer hive. Because that's where they go back to. And that's where they reproduce at, and that's where they spread out from in the neighboring neighborhoods. It's their safe haven. There's good winter shelter in there, and everywhere around it, as soon as spring comes, there's good feeding area. And like I said, the carrying capacity in there has obviously been way over exceeded as far as biologically what can be supported. And clearly by the residents here from around the Camp Manasseh area that are here, they've reached way over their carrying capacities for what we can tolerate. So we're looking at whatever measures you can make or take to open up hunting opportunities in and around, and especially on the Camp Manasseh property. And that's been a real problem for us. It's kind of a nebulous thing, The city owns it, correct? Am I correct in that? The city owns that property? Yes.
No,
But you lease it to Camp Manasseh for $1 or something like that a year, $10 or something like that. So Camp Manasseh kind of has say over that property as far as whether hunting is allowed there or not. Camp Manasseh has been very silent on this whole deer issue. They don't want to talk about it. And I don't know why. Because they're in this. They're a big part of it. And they've been kind of absent from the conversation. And the city kind of has that leverage or that negotiation power with Camp Manasseh because you're their landlord to help move something along, to get something done as far as reducing the deer on that property, and maybe using that approach on other properties around the city too, that maybe the city owns or leases or whatever, if there's other problems there. There's been some limited hunting in and around the property, but limited hunting has proven not to work. I was hoping it was gonna happen. Yesterday, I saw a doe laying in my backyard. This doe got up, laid down, got up, laid down, got up, laid down, had very weird behavior, and she was big, so I thought, wow, I'm gonna get to watch the deer population double in my backyard. Okay, I had the cameras all set up and everything. She was there for almost 4.5 hours. And then, of course, she wanders off out of my camera view into somebody else's yard, so they get it, bring that to her. But that's how things are. It's that there's so many deer that they've almost turned themselves into, I hate to call them, I'm starting to call them rats. Okay, or like rats. I rolled down my window to harass them. I yell, rats, because they're continually on our property, defecating. You can't use your property anymore. You can imagine if I took a bag full of dirt, a 50-pound bag full of dirt and strewn it on this piece of carpet here. That's what a lot of our yards look like with deer defecation. Like I said, you got 30 of them come there, visit there regularly, something has to be done. And the hive is the center of the problem, and ask the city again to move forward with looking at some sort of action. Hunting in there, limited hunting is not working. We only took 6 out of the area in the last year, probably. The reproduction on that area is probably going to be 45, 50, who knows? They have just 1 fawn, 2 fawns, or triplets. And when you deal with that many deer, and the other thing, all those deer that I took pictures of the other night, there wasn't a buck in any of them. Is that 47 deer that I took pictures of? There might have been some buck fawns that I didn't see the buttons on them, but there was no adult bucks in those pictures. So all 47 of those deer had the potential of turning into another deer. So it went from 40-something to almost 100. So, any other comments from the neighbors on?
Mike, you did a good job, I think.
You nailed it on the head.
I can just give a personal experience.
All right, just come up and give us your name and address. Get you on record here.
So, Clint Malikowski, 1432 Henrywood. I can give you a personal experience. So we hunted Lon and Tammy's old property. We did 13 sits. We shot 6.
Behind Schmidt's house, okay?
Sorry,
Behind Schmidt's house?
their old house, they sold.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're there.
Yeah.
I guess I would look at the council of saying, there definitely is a problem. Let's try to narrow it down to what the city wants to do in terms of, not being close to people's houses and things like that. I grew up in Wayzata, and I used to hunt $5 million home houses. So, I understand, there's a personal responsibility, you have to be respectful of the house. There may be rules you have to, abide by. Carcasses, gut piles, things like that. And I know this is kind of vile, but that's the truth of what happens here. But yeah, there's definitely an issue. Our backyard on Memorywood, my daughter can't play in it. She's 3. She fell down. I could show you the video. She was chasing 3 deer. And the first thing she did, when she fell, she grabbed a handful of food and threw it up. So, I guess that's just my 2 cents and my experiences. You go out and hunt that few times, harvest that many deer. There's a lot.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. My wife and I have lived in the South Dale, Cedar Dale, South area for 42 years. So we all live here. We're all kind of aware of it. Last night, there were 9 of them kind of by the soccer field. And I think you talked about your pockets or whatever. I think they're coming on that Forest View, whatever it's called there. Forest View Forest, yeah. So I think there are pockets, and they were sitting there at 48 eating and doing their thing. And so, I think we all have experienced it. I just want to clarify one other thing. The Campanacid property, just so that you guys are aware. the county was gonna sell that property, one way or the other. And the city didn't want to see a developer get that, the lake shore and everything else. So I'm just gonna say it, we were kind of forced, to buy it. So we did purchase it, we are the owners, but financing is kind of out of the picture now. They've deeded everything over to the YMCA. So just to don't be beating up financing anymore, because now you gotta beat up the YMCA. So the YMCA is the organization that actually has the lease with us. So just clarification there. So what are the suggestions here? Normally public comments, that's just what they are, their comments, we don't, but this is, I'm getting phone calls from all over the city, so.
Again, Mike Hammer, 4907 Circle Pines Road, Baxter. I'm a retired conservation officer, and I started out my career down in the Twin Cities metro area, and worked very closely with most of the municipalities that border the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge, Minnesota, and Fort Snelling State Park back in the late 80s and early 90s, when a lot of these metro areas down there tackled the deer problem for the first time, and was all involved in sharpshooting programs on Fish and Wildlife Service property and Fort Snelling State Park property, probably for almost 6 years on and off. Pretty heavy at the beginning, but less and less after that. When you get these big pockets of deer like this, kind of what I was talking before, limited hunting doesn't do the trick, because you can't take enough. And sometimes you need to go in with purposeful hunting. And by purposeful hunting, you go in there with an X number of deer that you want to remove from an area to bring the population somewhat back in check. It's kind of shock treating your outdoor pool. Okay, makes them go away, but they're going to still come back again later. And I think there's several pockets in Baxter where the Campanassi property is a fine example of that, where the city needs to look at options of going in and taking out large numbers of deer at once, or some method of doing that. I'm not saying guns or anything like that, but we do have archery approved in the city, and I think there's ways that it could be done very safely, efficiently, and at no cost to the city to make part of that deer hive over there go away. To bring it back to where it is tolerable to the neighbors, to where it is safe again for the deer. They don't have to worry about starving to death over the winters because all of their browse has been ate up because they're eating it all up. I get it back down to a number again where the browse will actually start growing back again, and people will be happy to see a deer versus, wow, we saw one, versus the rats are back. And I made a proposal back in December to, not to the city council, as a planning commission, about ways that could be done with organized archery hunts, with planned organized archery hunts. And the safest way to do it, and the quickest, most efficient way to do it, is to move the deer to a safe place where there's a high amount of archery hunters to take out the deer, to eliminate the deer. And I think that could be very effectively done on the Campanassi property for sure. Other properties I can't speak for that piece of property. I think if we had an organized 1-day, 2-day archery hunt in there, where we had archers stationed at safe places to shoot and used drivers to move the deer to the archers, we could make a lot of that population go away pretty quickly. The only problem with that is, what do we do about deer? And because these people aren't necessarily coming to do this because they want a deer. They're coming to do it because they want the deer population reduced so they don't have conflict with them anymore. So many of them will be deer hunters that are maybe
pay from the DNR to be able to do that kind of a party hunt or whatever?
No, we wouldn't. We just do it during the regular archery season. And basically what we look at is what does the city want as far as what they want from the archers to let them know is in there what we're doing. Because I think you would want to know if all of a sudden, if you open up archery hunting in Camp Manassas, that 40 hunters descend upon it are going to make all the deer go away. No, and how that would be done. No, you need some real coordination with the city on how something like that would be done. But no special permits from the DNR would be required whatsoever. Just whatever you want from your end.
I'm Malakowski, 14232 Marywood. I guess I apologize, but I would kind of disagree with that. My suggestion would be we have a select number of hunters that are allowed in Camp Manassas and that are allowed in maybe people calling saying, I have too many deer in my yard. So I look back, 8, 9 years ago when the black bear population blew up in northern Minnesota. The DNR said, we'll just give them more permits. Well, what happened is they actually shot less bear because the woods were just blown up and the bear just went and hid. I think if you have a smaller number of archery hunters that are very specific on where they can go, you will have a higher kill rate.
Okay, thank you. The ARC has had a terrible time, 500 acres and flower gardens or whatever. So they did I think last year they did it wasn't really a drawing, but they started out with 10 people. You have to see how that went and then maybe expand it, so go ahead.
Justin Barrett, 4897 Elk Street, Baxter. Council, thanks for the opportunity to share some thoughts on this important topic. As your recent newsletter clearly communicated, I do agree with the opening statement that says, the deer population in Baxter is at what seemed to be an all-time high. And, as some of the folks have stated earlier, we've been trying to increase the color on your hunting map, and I appreciate your efforts and interest in doing that. I think we need to continue, in summary, growing the colors on that map so that additional areas can have these deer numbers held into check. And it could be a combination of things. I don't think this is a one-size-fit-all approach that's necessary. I've been in conversation with the city of Duluth and their Arrowhead Archery Alliance. It's one of the model hunts in the nation as far as hunting in city limits. It's very, very well respected hunt. And they have what's called hot spots, and that would be akin to what's been going on the last 4 years up in Memorywood. So we've harvested 12 deer, 11 of those 12 are antlerless in the last 4 years off Memorywood, kind of in that Trevine Memorywood area. There's 4 rectangular long wooded lots. We're only hunting about 5 acres of that, and we've gotten 10 deer of those 12 in just the last 2 years. But to some of the other gentlemen's point, we're barely making a dent. It's certainly not hurting, but to really move the needle on this, we're going to have to get additional color on the map. And I think the beauty of the map is, right now there's 3 colors. We could add some additional colors that would represent more limited duration type of hunts. So, perfect example, Camp Ripley. You don't want any Rambo running around in Camp Ripley, but they figure out a way to make it work so that the deer population is controlled out there. And they have a 2 or 3 day or 4 day hunt every year. And they partner with Central Lakes College, which I think is something that the city could benefit from if we reached out to CLC and those college students. They'd be willing to help the city do some deer management estimates, stuff like that. I think if the city, instead of the mayor's phone ringing off the hook with deer complaints, we could have a portal on our website for folks that are irritated with the deer and say, hey, this is my location, I'm fed up with these deer, and they could check a box that says, I'm willing to be contacted by an archery hunter in the city of Baxter that's taken the International Bow Hunter Education course, so that they have some assurance that it's not any Rambo coming from Timbuktu that's gonna go flinging arrows crazy. So I think there's ways to do this. As far as financial implications of this, you know, everyone can relate to the vehicle-car collisions. There was a deer that just got turned inside out on 210 near Inglewood the last week or two, and certainly no one wants automotive repairs that are unnecessary, but it is planting season, and I can tell you that I will not be going to Landsberg or another nursery trying to beautify my yard this year, because I'll guarantee the deer are gonna eat everything I plant. Marigolds, Google it. It says all varieties of marigolds are a turnoff for deer. Not Baxter.
Not anymore.
Not Baxter. The flowers are getting eaten on our marigolds in Baxter. These deer, they eat anything and everything. The tree replacement cost, the beautiful trail by Whipple Beach. You know, we planted a bunch of nice maple trees there, the city did, and 80+% of them died because the bugs rubbed their antlers on them, girdled it, and we had to replant them. Essentia Health has planted trees by Whipple Beach. We've had to replant those if they haven't been wrapped. So again, we can look at Camp Ripley, we can get additional colors on this hunting map. We can have these hot spots where respectable, law-abiding archery hunters can remove deer in a very ethical way that keeps the neighbors happy. And we can just look across the river to Brainerd. They have a formalized process. I've got my hunting card right here for this coming fall. It's a nice laminated piece of paper. It says where I'm going to be hunting. That way, if there's an issue and the cops get involved, you know, it's right here. It's a pretty nice thing that the city of Brainerd has going on. So, you know, as far as the deer numbers, I recently learned some startling facts on the map. If we just have 2 of those deer that the fellow gentleman mentioned this year, in 7 years, if there's no predation or hunting, there could be 40 deer. Because, you know, they have their 2 babies each year. Or in Baxter, some of them have 3 babies a year because it's so easy to live in Baxter for a deer. So, you know, Baxter's a beautiful spot with a lot of parks and trails, and we're certainly not trying to make anyone feel uncomfortable that uses those parks and trails. There's a lot of cities throughout Minnesota that have established hunting seasons. You just establish some setbacks from these trails in these high usage areas of these parks so that there's no potential conflicts. And I think we can really move the needle if we get some more color on the map. So thank you.
Well, I think we all live here, so I think we're all aware of what you're talking about, and it's just kind of nice to hear some ideas. Chief, you have anything to add, or?
We have a lot, you know.
I got a phone call from one of you earlier on the week, and it's, okay, suggested that, the question was asked, who do we call to call the DNR? So I mentioned that we have an open forum, people can talk about anything. So I didn't know who's coming or whatever, so I did give the chief just a heads up in case he had any words of wisdom for us.
And this is something we've been working on as staff for about, the last 2-3 months, a little more intently than we had previously, but we've been talking about it for years, and like Mr. Barrett said, the hunting map is kind of been our go-to. He highlighted a couple things, but so far this year, late last year, we were questioning about whether we could do or should do special hunts. So we spent quite a bit of time researching that with the DNR. And what we came to find out is we don't really need to do a special hunt. The special hunts that they permit are generally in areas that wouldn't normally allow hunting. Well, we'll allow hunting wherever we want in Baxter as long as we put that color on the map. So we don't really need that special hunting. The other thing I thought maybe that special application would help us with was to change the rules, so to speak. Hunt outside of the normal hunting season or use weapons that aren't normally approved through the DNR, but we found out that that's not the case, so we kind of ended up right back at where we were to begin with. We have a hunting map. City of Baxter falls in zone 604, I think it is, which is the intensive harvest area because of the CWD. So if you're an individual hunter in our area, you can take up to 5 deer. So what we've been talking about as staff and a little bit with some of the people that have stepped up is what more can we do? And as staff and myself personally, I'm gonna tell you this, I don't think personally we're gonna win the deer management issue. It's gonna be a difficult one unless we throw tens of thousands of dollars or more at it. But what can we do as staff? That's where we've come up with kind of a more extensive list. I've looked into the Duluth one too, and that's a heck of a program they got going up there. But as far as I can tell, that's an all volunteer type group. I think there's a little bit of city involvement.
So the application fees go to the city?
Yep.
And then the Archery Alliance gets reimbursed from that fund?
So the Alliance itself is an independent volunteer group of people that have created this outstanding, benchmark to look towards. So not that we're gonna get there overnight, but I think maybe that's something we could do. We've got people in the community that have identified that have already been doing stuff similar to this, just less organized. So I think as a city role, I got 2 pages of notes here, I won't go through all of it, but some of the key things we've talked about, organize the volunteer groups, and then reach out to the organizations that are already established, like, when he left now, Mr. Malakowski talked about, people wanna go out there and hunt, but they might not necessarily want 5 deer at the end of the day. Met with the local DNR enforcement officer last week, and he talked about similar things that we had, reaching out to the shelters, the food shelves, stuff like that. The local Minnesota Deer Hunters Association. Councilmember Tabbitt talked to me about a couple other groups that could help in this, where we could maybe donate deer. Conservation officer talked about every fall we get a list of people who will take a hard-hit deer. Well, let's create a list of people that'll take an archery taking deer, and with help from the enforcement side of that, we can make that happen legally. So just a bunch of ideas. We reached out to our drone team to identify, so the drone team, Crown County has a drone team. They try and train monthly. An intriguing idea we threw out at them was, can we come to Baxter and identify these pockets of deer? All the drones that we have the infrared, and they can go up, and they're constantly seeing deer, not sheeple. So we can take them around to a neighborhood, identify a pocket of deer, and then maybe saturate that area. I don't know what the best way to hunt deer is overall. I have a belief as well, and I would tend to agree with limiting the number of hunters, but creating a focused group. And the reason I say that is last year we threw a bunch of wounded warriors out in the Southwest Baxter on a 2-day event, and they didn't hardly see any deer. That was about 15 people who had very limited hunting experience, and they all kind of rushed into the woods and the deer disappeared. We know that area is teeming with a deer population, probably almost as dense as some of these pockets, but I think what happened was they noticed something was up and they skedaddled too. So I think if we can somehow create a more organized approach, whether it's through the volunteers, call this hotline if you got a deer problem in your backyard. But then it goes back to the one other thing that people mentioned too, it's the color on the map. And I've been a big proponent of pushing more color, more color, more color. I think the Memory Wood Drive project, which is several years old now, has proven to be a model that we can support, we can point to as something that's worked. When they talk about taking 10 deer or whatever it is, that's pretty impressive for a small chunk of land. I can tell you, I was one of the people that was nervous about it when we went that way, but I think, Mr. Barrett did a good job organizing that, continues to do it probably. Let's build that out, let's find other communities, whether it's the Southdale community, and you throw a dark picture spot on the map, it's probably anywhere in town. But I think we can build on that. I think we can do all that at a fairly low cost. It'll be some staff time, obviously, I've got time invested. Josh Doty and Matthew Gindley have been helping out too. The one other thing I will tell you, and then I'll stop talking, the deer culling option, Grand Rapids, within the last month or so, CWD was identified up in that area. I can't speak to exactly how it happened, but the DNR, and I believe it's Fish and Wildlife, came in and they did a culling event up there. They took 50, 60 deer out of the neighborhood. That was, somebody paid for that other than the city of Grand Rapids. I don't know who. But that comes with a pretty significant cost. We had Christine Reese in here to talk to us earlier this year. She identified a similar program that's been going on in southeast Minnesota. They have a CWD hotspot down there. And she told me that it's a lot of money that they spend down there. I believe they pay U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services to come in and do that as well, like tens of thousands of dollars just to come in and shoot deer and try and keep the population down. Can you do it? Yes. Is it going to cost money? I think it's going to cost a lot of money. So as staff, we've been looking into some low-cost measures, and I got a lot of other ideas and thoughts, and Josh and Matthew have been helping too. So that's kind of the direction we've been going, with the help of some of our citizens. And as we continue, I think we're gonna need a lot more help from them, but I think people are out there. I think we need to promote the hunting, whether it's a youth hunt, a neighborhood hunt, just a healthy activity, just go and do that. So that's kind of where we're at in a nutshell, big nutshell.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I think we got people ready to volunteer, so let's put something together here.
All right.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else got anything?
I think everybody kind of covered it. You've done a good job.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming. And every time this happens, we get enlightened with a little more information. So, and some opportunities that are available to all of us too. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, is anybody else here to talk about anything else on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move right into the consent agenda. The following items are considered non-controversial by staff and are recommended to be read and passed in one motion. Any council person, staff, citizen, or meeting attendee can request one or more items be pulled. The item will be pulled and addressed immediately after the passage of the consent agenda. Otherwise, the following items will be passed in one motion. A, approve the city council work session minutes from April 19th, 2022. B, approve city council minutes from April 19th, 2022. C, approve the payment of bills and finance report. D, approve permit for retail sales of fireworks for Cub Foods, Target, and Walmart for the period of May 4th, 2022 through April 30th, 2023. E, adopt resolution 2022-036 relating to parking restrictions on Foley Road. F, adopt resolution 2022-037 relating to parking restrictions on Eaglewood Drive. G, adopt resolution 2022-038 for the authorization of the federal aid funding agreements for the 2022 Trunk Highway 210 Eaglewood Drive road improvement project. H, adopt resolution 2022-039, amending resolution 2022-029, ordering preparation of report for the Cypress Drive and Douglas Fir Drive improvements project, municipal project number 4087. I, set public hearing to vacate Nova Drive Railroad Crossing at 7 o'clock, Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 at Baxter City Hall. J, approve purchase of drainage and utility easements for 2022 Foley Road and Isle Drive and Fortham Road Improvement Project for parcel 4012087 and parcels 400708111 and 400708112. K, approve appointment for the seasonal position of streets and utility maintenance.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Cross, second by Ward. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
congratulate the award winners from the athletic banquet last night. It was a nice event and a lot of well-earned, deserved awards. And then this weekend's Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all the mothers.
Thank you.
Good.
Appreciate that.
Mark? I agree. I would just say, watch out for deer and motorcycles, because we are out.
I know I got run into by a deer, walking.
And I really don't have anything, city administrator.
Just a reminder of the upcoming Blighted annual meeting on May 19th. If you are planning to attend, if you could just please let me know by this Friday so I can register you to attend.
Did you get the registration numbers for the Duluth or?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. City attorney?
Just here for the closed session item that I said you're gonna move to after this.
Okay. Seeing nothing else, then I'll look for a motion to,
Motion to close the elephant and open the close.
all right, motion by Cross.
I will second.
Second